The most dangerous weapons in human history were never forged from iron or fired from cannons, because long before armies marched and empires rose, power learned to move quietly through the human mind, shaping decisions, bending loyalty, and controlling entire civilizations without drawing a single drop of blood. And once you understand this, history stops looking like a sequence of wars and starts looking like a long psychological experiment played on humanity itself. Thousands of years ago, when the first kings emerged from tribal societies, they quickly discovered that fear alone was unstable, because people obeyed only until fear faded, so rulers learned something far more effective: how to make obedience feel natural, inevitable, even chosen. And nowhere is this clearer than in ancient Mesopotamia, where kings claimed divine approval not by force but by narrative, presenting laws as gifts from the gods so that citizens followed rules not because they were watched, but because disobedience felt like a moral failure. In ancient Egypt, pharaohs perfected the art of memory control, carving their victories into stone temples while quietly erasing rivals from inscriptions, understanding that future generations would only remember what was preserved, and if history remembered them as gods, resistance would never exist in the minds of the living. Rome carried psychological power to new heights, where Julius Caesar mastered silence and inevitability better than any general before him, allowing his enemies to exhaust themselves with speeches and accusations while he said little, letting the Roman public feel that destiny itself was pushing him forward, because when people believe events are inevitable, they stop resisting and start adapting. As the Roman Republic collapsed into empire, emperors learned to offer the illusion of choice to maintain control, allowing senators to debate meaningless options while the real decisions were already made, creating the comforting appearance of freedom while stripping it away in practice. In imperial China, dynasties rose and fell not only through conquest but through the manipulation of loyalty and guilt, where Confucian ideals were used to bind subjects emotionally to the state, teaching generations that obedience was not submission but virtue. And once morality replaced force, rebellion became rare not because it was impossible, but because it felt wrong. Medieval Europe adopted psychological control through religion, where kings ruled by divine right and guilt became a weapon stronger than chains, convincing peasants and knights alike that suffering was noble, rebellion was sinful, and loyalty would be rewarded in another life, a strategy so powerful that millions endured poverty and oppression without uprising for centuries. Memory manipulation reached terrifying precision during this era, as chroniclers rewrote history at the command of rulers, turning defeats into victories and failures into divine tests, proving that controlling the story of the past was the fastest way to secure the future. During the Renaissance, as courts became centers of intrigue rather than battlefields, silence evolved into a tool of dominance, where a pause at the right moment could provoke fear, a withheld response could destroy reputations, and those who spoke too much often exposed themselves, while those who mastered restraint ruled from the shadows. The age of exploration expanded psychological power across continents, as European empires justified conquest by planting narratives of civilization and salvation, reframing exploitation as duty. And once these ideas took root, entire populations supported actions they would have rejected if described truthfully. Revolutionary movements did not break the cycle, they refined it, as leaders learned to climb the yes ladder of public opinion, starting with small promises of reform, then demanding greater sacrifices, until citizens found themselves supporting extremes they would have rejected at the beginning, convinced they had chosen every step along the way. Napoleon Bonaparte understood this better than most, carefully crafting his image through repeated victories, confident proclamations, and relentless symbolism, so that even his failures were reframed as temporary setbacks, embedding a false sense of destiny in the public mind that made resistance feel futile. In the 20th century, psychological control reached industrial scale, as totalitarian regimes weaponized propaganda, guilt, memory, and silence with chilling efficiency, offering citizens controlled choices that all led to loyalty, teaching children rewritten histories until false memories became national identity, and enforcing silence so thoroughly that people censored their own thoughts long before the state needed to intervene. Yet these methods were not confined to dictatorships. They thrived quietly in democracies, corporations, and institutions, shaping consumer behavior, political loyalty, and social norms through repetition, emotional pressure, and selective storytelling. History reveals a pattern that never changes. Those who control perception control reality, and those who master the human mind can rule without appearing to rule at all. Today, surrounded by information, we believe ourselves immune, yet the same techniques that guided emperors now operate through algorithms, headlines, and carefully framed choices, influencing what we buy, what we fear, and what we accept as normal. The uncomfortable lesson history leaves us with is not that power is evil, but that power is psychological before it is physical, and every generation faces the same silent test: to recognize these invisible forces or to live within them unknowingly, because the greatest empires were not built only with armies and gold, but with an understanding of how humans think, remember, obey, and remain silent. And until that truth is acknowledged, history will continue repeating itself not through war alone, but through the quiet conquest of the human mind.